Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for the 18th video, chapter 18, in what will be about a 34-part series, 34-part series on Fairy Tale by Stephen King. So what we've got here is we've got comments, we've got a So What Happened portion where we recap the chapter itself, then we've got a Lit Crit portion and a Writer's Note portion. The Writer's Note portion is just one note this week, but it's a big one, I think. So let's get into it. The comment that we had from last time came to us from Tanya, who, longtime friend of the channel, maybe the longest time friend of the channel, and she said that she just finished the book, and she agreed that the book felt flat. And she said that character depth is something that with which this book struggled, and that Charlie didn't feel fleshed out despite the fact that we spend so much time with him. And I think in the Lit Crit portion of this video, I have a comment to go with that last part of this, that Charlie doesn't feel fleshed out despite the fact that we spend so much time with him. And if the protagonist in a first-person narrative isn't fleshed out, what do we have? So I've got that coming, but on the front of this book feeling flat, I think, and I haven't finished the book, I think we see a little bit of why this week this book feels flat, in that we just now start, and I'll get to this later in the Lit Crit portion as well, we're just now starting to get some Stephen King-isms. So I don't think Stephen King really has found, through 18 chapters, I don't think Stephen King has quite found the story, has quite found the characters, has quite found the pace or the tone of this book. And I think that those things are really hampering this book. And I think part of what that might be is just the fact that this is not your everyday Stephen King, and it's hard to change gears. This is so much different than any of the Stephen King that I've read, and when you are a writer who is, I'm not going to be nice about it, Stephen King's a pretty old fella. Stephen King advanced in age. Let me see if I can just pull this up if I don't ruin everything by doing it. So when you're talking about a guy who has been writing books as long as Stephen King has, and you're talking about a guy in Stephen King who was born in 1947, it's going to be difficult to change gears. And I don't think he lubricated the spokes, right? I think he just dove into this project. That's how it reads. And so with 8 Mile, with On Writing, with Danse Macabre, you can see the work that was put in beforehand with the changing of the gears there. The spokes were lubricated before that machine got running. And because they were, it started off so much more smoothly. But with this book, we're getting there. We're getting a little bit up to speed. But we are, I mean, at this point, 336 pages in. So what happened in this chapter? Charlie gives us a description of Hannah, who looks to be about 20 feet tall, which is mildly concerning. And she's covered in bumps and boils on a, and maybe there's human bones surrounding her chair. There's bones. Maybe they're human. We don't know quite. So she gets up to go get food, and Charlie books it. Eventually, after booking it, Charlie and Radar get to the sundial that's going to turn back time, and not turn back time, turn back aging for the character that's on it. And we get this. I stepped over the pickets and walked across the sundial. It was sewn and divided into 14 pie wedges. Now, I think I know how long the days are here, I thought. A simple symbol, worn but still recognizable, was engraved in the center of each wedge. The two moons, the sun, a fish, a bird, a pig, an ox, a butterfly, a bee, a sheaf of wheat, a bundle of berries, a drop of water, a tree, a naked man, a naked woman who was pregnant, symbols of life. And as I passed beside the high pole in the center, I could hear the click, 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 click of the eyes in the sun's face as they went back and forth, ticking time away. So Radar gets spun back by Charlie in the sundial until she is, quote, in the prime of her life. On the way back, Charlie uses caution passing Hannah's abode, but whilst trying to stick to the correct path, realizes that Bowditch's initials are wiped clean. They have disappeared, and it turns out Peterkin, the dwarf from earlier, washed them away with lye in order to set up a game like Riddler from Batman, or like Mojo from the X-Men, or what was the other one from X-Men who was like that? He had red hair. He was named after where you go to play games. I can't remember what those were called. Anyway, doesn't matter. Radar attacks Peterkin, who is mysteriously speaking out of sight, and Peterkin curses the pair. Charlie gets to within seeing distance of Peterkin after he has been attacked, but ultimately Peterkin gets away after hopping up a building, over a fence, yada yada. Charlie becomes a victim of Red Molly. Oh. He curses Charlie, does Peterkin, hoping that he becomes a victim of Red Molly in something called the Fair One. Fair One capitalized, presumably in reference to some Hunger Games type of competition. You will be in the Fair One. So I think we've got that to look forward to. But here's where I really want to start in the Lit Crit portion of this video. On 320, while he is observing Hannah, I think we would have been discovered if Hannah hadn't chose that moment to break into song. Stick a sticker, Joe, my love, stick it where it goes, my love. Stick a sticker all night long, stick me with your prong-de-dong. Prong-de-dong, oh prong-de-dong, stick me with your prong-de-dong. This is Stephen King. This is the Stephen King that should have been here all along, something that is not just otherworldly, but also kind of uncomfortable, also fairly inappropriate, also something that is, what would you say? Stephen King is constantly sort of dancing on the line between what is completely unexpected and what it is that you are scared will happen next. Now, you see this giant figure that is Hannah. It's completely unexpected that she's going to break into song, but it's sort of what you hope doesn't happen, that she's a real wretch as well. She's not just a large person. She's not just questionably feeding on people, but she's kind of a weirdo as well. So that happens, and it is exactly what you would expect from Stephen King. And a little bit further in here, once Charlie gets past Hannah and starts on his way, we get this passage on 325. Lying in that pool, once perhaps a soothing blue, but now turned silty and dim with decomposition, were the remains of a mermaid, but not Ariel, the Disney princess daughter of King Triton and Queen Athena. No, not her. Most certainly not her. There was no sparkly green tail, no blue eyes, no billow of red hair, no cute little purple bra top either. I thought this mermaid had once been blonde, but most of her hair had fallen out and floated on top of the pool. Her tail might once have been green, but now it was a stupid, lifeless gray, like her skin. Her lips were gone, revealing the ring of small teeth. Her eyes were empty sockets. Once again, this is Stephen King. Where has this been? All of the opportunities that we've had for Stephen King to come out as Stephen King, like the night he spent in the closet / outhouse / whatever it was he spent in there with Radar when Radar was still dying, and there were werewolf type individuals creeping around. We could have got some Stephen King there, but we didn't. There was no Stephen King to be had. We could have gotten some Stephen King first upon meeting this world, where there are all of these people without faces. We didn't get Stephen King there. We could have gotten Stephen King. We could have gotten a touch of Jack Torrance, even, in the scene where he breaks old boy's arms, his wrists, and tosses him over the fence. But we don't. We don't get Jack Torrance there. There were all of these opportunities for Stephen King to be Stephen King, and he didn't take any of them. But here, we're starting to finally get them. This is classic Stephen King. And what's so interesting about this, it's a mermaid. Pretty classic fairy tale stuff. There could have been Stephen King isms about all of these classic fairy tale tropes that we've seen so far. But we're just getting a little bit with Hannah, and here we are getting a little bit with the mermaid. Now, as of right now, the mermaid is completely throwaway. There's nothing else going on with that mermaid. But we've got it. It feels in the text like Stephen King just found himself. And are we in falling action now? Are we on the downward slope of this story? I don't know. It seems like what we're supposed to be doing is we're supposed to be feeling that faux triumph. And I think that's where we're at. So we're not really technically in the downward slope of the story. But it would be a shame if it were. And Stephen King was just now finding his voice as the writer. Now, about that comment that Tanya left about the character depth and how we spend all of this time with Charlie, but he's still a flat character. There's no character depth there. There's no knowing Charlie. On page 332, and I mean, if you were reading this in a critical manner, I think this will slap you in the face. Now, even someone who's reading in a critical manner, it's difficult to be reading critically the entire time you're with a book. But we get this from Charlie. I had an idea that if Hannah messed with raids, she was going to lose some flesh. That, I thought, would be a pleasant sight to see. Why does Charlie have all of this animosity towards Hannah so far? Hannah hasn't done anything towards Charlie so far. All we have, really, are other people's stories. And we don't really even have all that much story relayed to us about someone like Hannah. We have an observation. And I think, for me, this is part of what is contributing to the fact that Charlie doesn't feel quite that deep a character, and neither does really anybody in the story. Think of all of the decisions that Charlie has made. Charlie made the decision to go save Bowditch. Now, okay, that was instinctual. After that, Charlie made the decision that he couldn't let Bowditch struggle, and he really liked Radar. Why did he want to save Radar? He couldn't tell us. Now, it's easy to be a backseat driver, but it would have been simple for Stephen King to plant something like the fact that maybe when his mom went to that gas station before she got hit on the bridge, they had a new puppy. It wasn't just mom he lost, it was mom and the puppy. Forever, those two would be linked in Charlie's mind. He would have a soft spot for puppies because that's having a soft spot for mom. Saving that dog would be like saving your mom. Instead, Charlie just kind of likes the dog. Okay, fine. Here, it would be easy for us to get some insight to why Charlie decides. It would be so fun to see Radar sink her teeth into Hannah. Instead, like, why is that there? Why is that there? It seems the more relatable emotion in this moment with Charlie and Radar on the run would not be aggression towards Hannah, but would be towards trying to skirt around her. Having a little bit of fear there would feel to be the appropriate emotion, would be the emotion that would endear Charlie to the reader, because the reader is supposed to feel fear in this moment. We don't really, because Charlie doesn't. When Charlie comes across Peterkin and decides he has a hankering to help a giant red grasshopper, okay, sort of weird. But here's the thing. All of those decisions can be made, and we can relate with them. We can empathize with them. We can let them go as a reader. But every decision being that way is more difficult with which to parse. Charlie is, as a reader, our only in to this world. We're not there with Radar. We're not there with Bowditch. We're not there with anybody, especially anybody that lives there. So he's our only entry point to this world. The fact that I certainly wasn't won over emotionally by Charlie going into this. And I find it difficult to believe that unless you are the most credulous of readers, which there's nothing wrong with that, but if you are an incredibly credulous reader, just, hey man, I'm a sheet in the wind, I'm along for the ride, let's go. If that is the case, okay, I guess you can empathize with Charlie and you can be there with him making these decisions. But even then, I think you have to admit that he's just making the decisions. There's nothing seemingly compelling him down one path or another. Oh, right. So 333, the kissing page to this quote. We have when Charlie has turned around and is trying to take Radar back to civilization. He's looking for Bowditch's initials. It should have been easy. Simply follow Mr. Bowditch's marks in reverse. This is a problem. So say this is the pole that Mr. Bowditch has written AB on, and you're coming down the path this way. Well, you see Mr. Bowditch's initials. On the reverse, did Mr. Bowditch decide to put his initials on both sides of the pole? That would be kind of weird. It is just this could have been a problem for Charlie even without those initials disappearing. Objects in 3D have more than one side. So I don't know if this is we never get told that Bowditch has put his initials on both sides of the pole. So you can see his initials going both ways. We don't get told that. Maybe that's the case. Or maybe it is just a failure to conceptualize. I find that difficult to believe with Stephen King. Stephen King has written 1,000 books. Stephen King has sold more books than God. The fact that he would fail to recognize a three-dimensional world as he is writing it down, which is what that would be, right? Three-dimensional objects have more than one side, so you can't just put your initials on one side of it and expect to be able to see it both coming and going. So that was troublesome for me from the very beginning, and I thought maybe he would address it, but he never did. In fact, he addressed it sort of in the opposite way. So, I don't know. Now, the one writer's note that I have here, and this could easily have been put into the lit crit point, but I think that it is worth considering as a writer more than as a reader. And that is this. Radar was rejuvenated on the merry-go-round type sundial. This was through some sort of magic. But is there a cost to this magic? This is one of the classic examples of there being a cost to the magic isn't even there being a cost to the magic. It's just that the magic in this type of situation isn't as thorough as the person undergoing the magic would hope. So, for example, one of the ways that you do that in a situation like this is that a person gets this magical solution to look younger. And they look younger. But they're not. So, if you are 70, life expectancy 72, pardon me, you're 70 in the story, and you spin on that thing all the way back to 30, right? You're still going to die in 2 years. That's sort of one of the ways that you even something like this out, and you get something fun to play with as a storyteller. What are the opposite sides of this? What are we doing with the other part of that story? The person's still going to... So you're 70, you're going to die in 2 years, but you look 30. At that point, one of the things you get to play with as a storyteller, at that point, how selfish are you if you decide to go and find a lover? You know you're only going to be around a couple years. Your lover doesn't. Right? So how selfish would you be at that point as a 70-year-old looking 30, finding yourself a nice-looking young woman to father a child? These sorts of things are questions that are raised and get to be examined through literature by something like magic. Another example of something like this, you get on that little merry-go-round and it makes you younger, but you lose some portion of your soul. So, at what point do you have to wager whether or not you're crossing over to 51%? At that 51% mark, you don't own the rest of your soul anymore. It's just like a business. You sell that 51st percentage of your soul, you belong to the devil. These are things like that. What if it worked like radiation? What if the cost here, so you get something good in being younger, but the cost is that it's like radiation. The magic works in the same way that a radiation hits you. So you get to experience youth again. You get to turn it back. But your odds for something like cancer just went up. You just got nuked, right? So this is one of the big criticisms that I had against the Harry Potter series, is that in Harry Potter, the magic has no weight. The magic has no weight because the magic has no reciprocity. There's no reciprocation from the other world from which that magic stems. There is nothing on the other end of it. You tug the rope just gets longer, right? In a story like this, from a writer like Stephen King, we expect that if there's going to be something like that magic going on, that magic is going to have a cost. We don't see it yet. Maybe it will be there, but I sincerely hope that there is some other end to this process. Pardon me. That is all I have for this, the 18th chapter, the 18th in a 34-ish part series as we journey chapter by chapter through Fairy Tale by Stephen King. And I hope to see you in the next video. Chapter 19. Who'd have thought?